direct!
Hello everyone, my name is Mikel Graham and I'm coming to you from Heli Direct, and today we're going to be talking about motors. Now there are a number of popular brands out right now. We have X-Nova, Eagle Drift, Scorpion of course, Contronic. I'm a bit partial to X-Nova here, as you can see, but this isn't going to be a comparison video. We're just going to talk about some general principles about motors, how to take care of them, and just what you can expect. So with that said, let's get started. Let's start out talking about the main components of an electric motor. Here I have a Scorpion Outrunner motor. The reason why it is called an Outrunner is because the external part here, which we call the can, or in other terms, the rotor, is what spins. And here, what's internal, this is the stator. This is stationary. This is what's mounted to your helicopter. And this is where you'll find the electrical coils that will generate the magnetic field that will turn the magnets that are inside the can, which of course is attached to the shaft that goes through the motor that drives our helicopter. Every motor will have a set of numbers. On this motor we have 5035-380 kV. The 5035 represents the size of the stator. The 50 represents the diameter, and the 35 represents the length. The 380 is the kV, which tells you the number of RPM you will get for each voltage applied. So you need to know this number when choosing the correct pinion to get the correct gear ratio to get the desired RPM on your helicopter. Generally speaking, the larger the motor, the more powerful, and the higher the kV, the more powerful. Usually lower kVs are for low RPM and for higher efficiency setups. This particular motor, the 5035, this motor was used in a Logo 800. So this is a chungus. Another important number to know is the number of magnets inside the can. This is what is called your pole count. It's always going to be an even number. Now on the stator, not as important, but just kind of fun to know, that you will always have a multiple of 3 coils. So in this case, we have 12 coils here. So how do our motors work? Now, we can go down a rabbit hole on how these things work, but I'm going to try to put this in the simplest terms possible. So what happens is these coils, using these 3 wires, these coils get energized. So your ESC will power these 2 to create a circuit, and then these 2, and then these 2, and it's constantly switching. And what that does is that creates an electrical current through these coils, which in turn creates a magnetic field. These magnetic fields in turn push and pull the magnets inside the can. That's pretty much how they work in a nutshell. But I am going to bring up another important piece that's going to be useful later on. There's a limit to how much magnetic flux the core or the stator can carry. And so the reason why I bring this up is that when a motor core is saturated, that's when you start generating heat. So what this means is, what's basically happening is that you're pumping current and electricity through the coils to create this magnetic field. But there's only so much field that this core can hold and generate. So what happens to that extra energy? That extra energy gets turned into heat. This is going to be important later on. I want to bring up another detail about stator cores and that magnetic flux. If you ever open up your motor, you'll notice that the stator seems to be made up of multiple layers. All right? So if you look closely, it looks like you can scratch it with your finger. It's just multiple layers. Why is that? Well, it has something to do with what I mentioned previously. So you remember when I said that these coils generate magnetic fields inside the core? Well, if this was a solid piece of steel, for example, that process of generating those magnetic fields generate what are called eddies. These eddies are basically small electrical currents inside the metal itself. So an eddy is just like, imagine taking your hand in a swimming pool and just spinning it around, and those little vortices that you see, those are called eddies. This happens inside the core of motors. Now, what does this have to do with the stator being made of these little layers? Well, the size of the eddy determines how much energy it carries. And the more eddies that a core has, the more work it takes to get them to stop or change direction. Because remember, your ESC is constantly energizing two at a time. And so these fields are changing direction all the time as this thing is spinning around. And so when you have those eddies, to change direction of those eddies or to stop them completely, all of that takes energy, and all of that will generate more heat. So by breaking the core up into these little layers, all of these layers are separated. They are all insulated from one another. That limits the size of the eddies that can form. Smaller eddies are much easier to change direction or cancel out than larger eddies. And so that's why all modern motors have stators that are made with these multiple layers of steel, basically. All right, so pretty cool fact, good to know. And the smaller the layers, the better the motor. And I will say these are some of the smallest I've seen. I remember earlier I mentioned that these motors have 3 sets of coils. These coils are terminated in typically one of 2 ways. There is the Y configuration and the delta configuration. Now, what's the difference between these two as far as performance and, as far as our helicopters are concerned? Well, generally speaking, the Y configuration is considered more efficient and cooler running, and the delta configuration is considered more powerful and hotter running. In the market today, I've seen both Y and delta on motors, and within the popular brands, there are some very powerful motors that are Y configuration, and I'm sure there are some very efficient motors that are in delta configuration. So these are just general rules of thumb. They are not the gospel, but just something to know that generally speaking, delta will give you more power, Y will give you more efficiency. Now let's talk about windings here. Generally speaking, you'll find either multi-strand or single strand. This here is multi-strand. In the past, pretty much all motors were multi-strand, and there was a number of reasons for that. Multi-strand wire is much easier to wind and wrap around. You have to wrap it around these corners, and the covering, the enamel that insulates the wire is much less likely to crack and break when making those turns. Not only that, but having multiple strands, the surface area of the wire is higher, which allows for better cooling. So now materials have improved, manufacturing processes have improved. Now you are starting to see there are a lot of motors now that have single strand windings. And with these single strand windings, they have new coatings that can make the turn without cracking, without compromising the integrity of the wire, and it can handle the higher temperatures. Typically, from what I've seen, single strand winding motors tend to be on the more powerful side. But with that said, I have seen some very powerful motors on the upper end of the range that are multi-strand. So at this point, either one will work well. Single strand will deliver, multi-strand will deliver, because the manufacturing process and things we've learned over the years, things have improved. So pretty much either one will work, but now you know what's going on. Now, I had mentioned the covering, the enamel that's on the windings. Now I want to make a quick point about shortening motor wires. So when you get a motor, the wires will be pre-tinned, that is ready for you to solder on your connector to connect to the ESC. If you want to shorten these, there's no harm to the motor. There's no harm in shortening them. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. It's just wire, but you want to make sure they're all the same length. But it's no harm in shortening them. The only thing you need to remember though is that if you do shorten them, you need to remove that covering. There are different ways to do it. You can scrape it off. I've heard that you can use acetone. I don't know how well that works personally, but you can look it up, find out the best way to get it off, but you need to make sure that you are able to get it off before you solder on your new connectors. So I want to make a quick point about bearing maintenance. I know some manufacturers recommend that you oil your bearings every 30 or 50 or 100 flights or whatever the number is. I'll be completely honest, I have never oiled the bearings on my motors. In all my years of being in this hobby, I've only had one bearing fail in a motor, and that was after about 8 or 9 years of use. I think today, with today's manufacturing, I think that bearings are pretty high quality. I've never seen anyone's bearing fail on a motor that wasn't pretty old already. But one thing, just keep in mind, just make sure that they're smooth and you're probably good to go, honestly. Now, let's talk about temperatures and heat. This is what I was referring to earlier. So, generally speaking, when you're running your motor, when you're running your helicopter, your motor's going to warm up. That's just natural. It's expected to. But there's a point where it becomes dangerous. So general rule of thumb, if you can't hold your finger on the can for more than a second without burning it, or if it's just too hot and it just burns, it's probably running too hot. There are certain brands that tend to run hotter than others. Personally, I don't like when my motors are running excessively hot. General rule of thumb, if your motor is running excessively hot, something is wrong somewhere. So what does that mean? Something is wrong somewhere. So that could mean that you have an improper gear ratio, or you're running too much power, or the motor is not powerful enough to handle what you're throwing at it, or poor connection in the motor connection to the ESC, or something is failing. The coils, the enamel is starting to go, and you're shorting the motor inside. But generally speaking, modern motors today are capable of handling very, very, very high temperatures. The chances of you burning up a motor today is pretty slim, assuming everything is set up properly. This magnet wire is typically rated up to 100, 150, 200 degrees Celsius. This is not Fahrenheit, Celsius. And the magnets are as well. Now, magnets, have different ratings. They're called N ratings. There's N34, 36, highest is N52. That tells you the strength of the magnetic field. And then there are other ratings beyond that tell you the temperature that the magnets can handle. I bring all of this up because when motors get excessively hot, there are typically two modes of failure. The enamel coating will go, it'll basically melt off, and then the wires will short with each other. And you can demagnetize the magnets. So the magnets above a certain temperature will start losing their magnetic fields, and then your motor will start losing power. And all of that extra energy that was used to turn the can is now just going into heat, and now you have a runaway reaction, and your motor essentially burns up. Typically speaking, you don't have to worry about that today. I have not heard of many motors burning up these days. I have seen one or two burn up, but those were very, very rare occurrences. Generally speaking, our motors can handle high heat But keep in mind, what is too much heat? If you can't touch it, like if it's too hot to touch, it's probably too hot. While we're on the subject of heat, there was a discussion, I had a discussion with someone in the past about whether or not you should let your motor cool down after every flight. There are differing differing chains of thought, schools of thought, when it comes to this. Here's what's happening. When you fly, things get hot. What happens when materials get hot? They expand. And then you let them cool down, they contract. So that process of heating up and cooling down, that is what is called a thermal cycle, okay? So just like you take a paper clip and you work it back and forth over, that's mechanical cycle, you work it back and forth over and over, it fatigues and it breaks. Thermal cycle does the same thing. So there is a school of thought that says, oh, you should let it cool down completely so it's not, sitting at that high temperature all the time, because the higher temperature something is, the more likely things are going to start breaking down. Things break down naturally due to entropy, and that process of breaking down is accelerated at a higher temperature. So you can either cool down and let it thermal cycle over and over, or you can just fly back to back to back and just keep it at that steady state of that high temperature. The truth is, in my opinion, I don't think it matters at this point, because the materials and manufacturing that I've mentioned before, we're nowhere near the limits of the materials of what these motors can do. Generally speaking, these motors are typically plug and play. They're non-temperamental. They just work until they finally break down. And I'll be honest, the only time I've broken down a motor is when the bearings went, but the actual parts of the motor, the coils, the stator, the magnets, those never went. So at this point, I really don't think it matters, especially with the current trove of motors and the high quality brands that are out. I don't think you need to worry about it. So if you want to fly back to back, you want to fly and let it cool down, it's not going to hurt your motor. So just go out and have fun. Now, we've been talking about motors. Of course, we have to talk a little bit about speed controllers, what drives the motor. Not going to spend too much time on that, but I just want to make a few comments and a few general rules of thumb. The two most important settings that you really got to worry about when connecting your motor to your ESC is the timing and the frequency. So timing is basically where the ESC will switch the coils relative to the position of the magnets, right? Timing is measured in degrees, and generally speaking, the higher the timing, the more powerful the motor. Lower the timing, the more efficient the motor. Of course, with more power typically comes with more heat. Now, with the next setting is frequency. So frequency is basically not how fast the ESC is switching between these coils, but rather how fast it's turning the coils themselves on and off. So for example, let's say we're on this coil, and it's how fast it's turning this coil on and off, because it's happening digitally and it has a duty cycle. And the longer the duty cycle, that's your throttle. Shorter duty cycle, lower throttle. That frequency, that update frequency, general rule of thumb is higher update frequency will yield a cooler running motor, but a warmer running ESC. Lower update frequency has just the opposite effect. Lower update frequency, it's easier on the ESC. Your ESC will run a little bit cooler, but the motor will run a little bit hotter. With all that said, back to my previous points I've made, today's modern motors and today's modern ESCs, for the vast majority of us, myself included, the stock settings will work. There are certain motor and certain ESC combinations that are a bit more temperamental, where you do need to adjust the timing, you do need to adjust the frequency. But generally speaking, most of the popular brands, most of the popular motors with most of the popular ESCs, the stock settings will work just fine. Personally, in the past, I have tried different timings with my motors. I did not see a change in performance. I can't recall if I saw a change in temperature either. Today, though, with today's modern ESCs and motor, there might be a greater difference. But personally, in my personal experience, and I would say previous generation equipment, I did not see a difference. As of today, right now, all of my settings are stock. Whatever the stock ESC setting is, and I slap on the motor, stock settings, and I go fly, and everything's happy. All right, so final things about motors. General maintenance and just taking care of it. Generally speaking, when the motor's in your helicopter, you should be able to turn it by hand and it should be pretty smooth. If you feel any sort of crunchiness or it's just kind of like jagged or something, that's a sign that something's wrong. First things first, disconnect the motor from the ESC and still turn it, because if it still feels weird, then it might be something with the ESC. You might have an electrical connection. If it feels kind of rough, then that's bearings or something has gotten inside. I've definitely had a set screw fall in the motor. It's not fun because you have to take the whole helicopter apart and the motor to get it out, but it does happen. So every now and then, just kind of twist your motor and make sure that it spins smoothly. Another thing to check, not only does it need to spin smoothly, but it needs to spin easily. If you are turning your motor and it seems to be a little bit more difficult to turn, it's still smooth, but it feels more difficult to turn than usual, it's a very good chance that you have a short. So if you take your motor, you take any motor right now, if you hold any two of the leads together and then try to turn it, it'll be significantly harder to turn. If you hold all three together, it becomes very, very hard to turn. Like it's almost as if you're trying to turn it through like honey. That's a sign that something is shorted inside and the motor's probably done. You probably need to go and replace it or fix the coils. That can happen when the coating on the wire has started to melt and fail and the coils are starting to short. Or, which doesn't happen much today, but it was a bit of an issue in the past, the mounting screws that you use to mount the motor have gone so far in that it may have pierced one of the coils. Another quick test, what you can do, and also this is a good test to know, if you take a voltmeter, you should be able to check the connection between one of the leads and the can or any other piece on the shaft of the motor. You should not have an electrical connection between the leads and the shaft or anything else. You should only have any electrical connection between these leads. If you have electrical conductivity anywhere else between the lead and anywhere else on the motor, you have a short and there's something wrong. Depending on what it is, it might still be okay. But I don't recommend flying it. So generally speaking, make sure it turns smoothly and make sure that it turns easily. If those two conditions are met, chances are your motor is good to go. All right, guys, I hope you've learned a thing or two about motors. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below and I'll do my best to answer. And as always, go to helidirect.com for all of your motor needs. And with that, thank you for watching and happy flying.